everybody, and welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. As always, I'm Alec Brennan. That's Mike Wolfgang joining me in here today for a Tuesday edition of the show. Going to finish up high school football. Got a couple conferences to continue to go over, and we'll talk about live games going on tonight on your sports network. Got a couple good ones coming up for volleyball, so that'll be exciting to talk about here at the end of the show. But as always, thank you for tuning in. Mike, missed out on some of the conferences, but we saved Gerard for you, so we're going to get down to them here pretty soon. Why don't we get right into it, though? MVAC Scarlet Tier over the weekend. Jackson Milton started out the play 41-0 over Sebring. Mike, this was a really great bounce back here for Jackson Milton after the absolute beatdown against Lowellville. So I think coming into it, they really needed a game like this. And unfortunately, Sebring's on the receiving end of it. Nothing they can really do. It's been a rough season for them. They've had little offense in their really hard schedule they've had to go through, and their defense just hasn't been able to give them any slack. So, I'm really not surprised Jackson Milton came in here and did this, but it's a much-needed win for him, and it sets up a great matchup this Friday against Mineral Ridge, and it gives them some momentum back after Lowellville embarrassed them on their home field.
Yeah, like you said, not too surprising, but when you're talking about the last game they played before that, like you said, the blowout to Lowellville, when things are going good before that, you win 4 straight in a row to open up the season. Then you drop that one in a blowout fashion. Everybody's talking the whole week about, Lowellville's quarterback dropping 9 touchdown passes. You guys not really talking about you.
Me. That was me.
All of us. Right. We were all deservedly so. 9 touchdown passes, impressive any level. But the whole week after that, everybody's talking about that and how not really even about you, just about Lowellville in general. And then you come out and put up shutout. You pitch a shutout 41-0. That's a little bit of a personality or gut check a little bit, if you want to say, about the team that they got embarrassed and they come out next week and embarrass who the next team they played. So that I think that's a little bit of a testament to who they are.
And how about a turnaround for the defense? You give up 62 points one week, 0 points the next. You get the shutout. I know it wasn't against much of an offense.
So you shut out anybody.
Sebring's had their troubles, but getting that shutout, I think if they had given up a touchdown, we wouldn't look at this game the same, because it would be like, yeah, it was fine. They still let up a touchdown to a team that hasn't really scored very much. You get that shutout, and it's like, all right, they definitely had a bad week against Lowellville, I think is kind of what you can pin it down to. This will be a real test. They're going up against a tough Mineral Ridge team that doesn't have the offensive power of Lowellville, but they're still a really good all-around team. It's a one-loss crew who got upset by a rebounding Springfield team. So, it's going to set up a great spot. And Jackson Milton still in a place where, if they run the table and Lowellville goes down twice, they can still take this conference, but they do kind of lose that edge, and they need somebody to pull something against Lowellville, and that just likely isn't going to happen.
Yeah, I whether you want to say it or not, against who love a competition, whatever, but out of their 6 games, 3 of them have been shutouts from their defense. So that's still pretty good. And like I said, after a beat down the week before, they come out and pitch a shutout. The other one that was against LeBray, I know LeBray's not having the year they expected. Letonia's not having a great year either. But still, you're half the games you've played so far, you haven't given up anything.
Yeah, it really, outside of that one game, it's been impressive for him. So, you do look at that one and go, that's the unfortunate situation out of all of it. Trying to see where they sit currently in playoff standing. So they're the number 12 team in Region 21, just behind the Brookfield Warriors and their opponent this weekend, Mineral Ridge. So they can take a jump this weekend, still very much in the playoff hunt. So, even though you lose that game, likely not going to take the conference, you still have playoffs on the mind. That's got to be the mentality now. A 9-1 record or even an 8-2 is going to be good enough, more than likely, to get this team a playoff spot. There's a couple. The team's right behind them. Brooklyn is 3-2. Independence is a 1-4 team, but they have a high strength of schedule. Massillon Tuslaw is 2-3. 3-2 Waterloo, 2-3 Rittman. So all these teams up here can pretty much afford a loss at this point. You just can't afford more than one. So if whoever loses this between Jackson Milton and the Ridge probably can't slip up again, because playing in this MVAC Scarlet Tier, no one's really getting a great strength of schedule. And, everyone's kind of getting punished for that, because it's definitely a down year for the conference, with no Springfield really being, in the conversation. They obviously get a win. They're now 2-1 in conference play. Can still very much win the conference. After, an 0-4 start, they've now won 2-0. We'll go to the next. Springfield took down McDonald 37-21. McDonald drops to 1-2 in conference play, 2-4 overall. But this brings Springfield up now 2-4. They're 2-1 in conference play. And in my head, I just keep going back to this conversation I had with Sean Guerrero at the beginning of the season when they took on Brookfield in week 2. And we were talking down on the field, and he's like, we're going to make these young mistakes early in the season. It's not going to be a great start. You know, kind of the gist of what he was saying. It's like, it's going to be rough to start, but by playoff time, this is going to be a team that's ready to go. And now you've seen the last 2 weeks, a complete change in mentality. Going into week 4, they hadn't scored more than 2 touchdowns in a game. They put up 24 against Louisville. They lose, but they kept it close. 42-24. Louisville got a late touchdown that made it look a little better. Then they go in and upset Ridge. Then they take down McDonald. And the offense last time out scored 37 points. They're high on the season. And the defense now is improving. They gave up 37 points at the start of the season. They gave up 42 in week 4. Last 2 weeks, they have allowed a combined 33 points. So this Springfield team, it's been a complete turnaround. And you look at the upcoming schedule. Waterloo, I would say if this is the team that continues to play like they have the last 2 weeks, winnable game. Western Reserve, again, they continue to play like this, winnable game. Then that sets up an awesome week 9 matchup, Springfield, Jackson, Milton. And unfortunately for Springfield, any chance of that conference title goes down to Louisville losing twice. And if then Louisville loses twice here to finish out the season, you know, likely whoever beats them is getting into the championship and winning it. But that Jackson-Milton matchup could ultimately come down to something important for terms of playoff positioning in the MVAC Scarlet. So you look at Springfield right now at 2-4, a 6-5 record or 6-4 record would really be great. And they're the number 18 seed right now in Region 25. So they are in the conversation. They're in the computer rankings. I believe it's top 16 teams is what it's gone down to for playoffs. So they're right there in it. Number 16 team is East Canton, and they are 2-3 with a computer ranking that's 0.1 higher than Springfield. So a couple of wins here, and this came out last week, so this doesn't factor in yet the new win over the weekend. I'm gonna try and see if I can find those actually if they've come out yet. But Tigers are in a really good spot right now. They can still make the playoffs, and I don't think they want a 16 seed because more than likely they need to get something up a little bit higher, maybe 10, 11, because right now you don't want to go up against any of the top 5 teams. Number 1, JFK. Number 2, Danville. 3 is Louisville. 4 is Southern, who's 5-0. Number 5 is Toronto. I know Springfield can probably pull off an upset. I mean, they kept it close against Louisville, but that's not how you want your playoffs to start. You don't want to be going up against one of those 5 teams. So it's going to be a run to the end of the season, but I think Springfield is in a really good spot coming off the win. McDonald not out of it either. I mean, they are still a 2-4 team. Let me see if I can. They are not currently in the computer ranking, so outside of the top 20. But again, a 6-4 season, you might be able to with our expanded playoffs at this point. You might be able to grab a spot because there's already 4 lost teams that are still in the discussion. If you can win your last 5 games, your last 4 games, you can make something happen.
Yeah, and I think especially for a lot of these teams, like we said, it's not the strongest year for this conference. That's normally, you normally have McDonald at the top of this conference, like, Louisville, like you were saying. And a lot of these teams that are normally makes this conference strong, it hasn't been that case. But like you said, you also have teams at the point of, as this moment, they're starting to turn things around a little bit and have chances to get. There's a lot of teams in the conference that have like legitimate shots of trying to get into the playoffs. And like you said, who they play in the first round, that's not to be determined. But I guarantee you, Springfield doesn't care about that right now. After the start they just want to get in. A lot of these teams want to get
McDonald in. Actually, I got it. The updated rankings, they just came out today, so I just snagged them. McDonald is 22nd in Region 25. Let me grab Springfield real quick. See where they sit. Springfield, after the win, now at 2-4, they're the number 11 seed. So that's a pretty good spot to be.
Yeah.
And, another win could potentially move them up. Right now, they're the highest rated 2-4 team inside of Division 7 football in Region 25. Behind them is Fairport Harding at 2-4 and Tuscarawas Central Catholic is a 2-4 team. But really outside of that, no other 2-4 teams are getting any pushes. East Canton dropped out. So Springfield now in a better shot to take it, but Louisville's moves up to second. Number 1 still JFK, despite the loss. Granted, it was they've had a pretty good loss on the season, so can't really hate on that one very much. But continuing on in this conference, you look down to Louisville. They continue to run it. I just mentioned they moved to number 2 inside of the rankings right behind JFK, and they put down another offensive stampede over Waterloo. They were winning in the first half by 36-12. Then each team got 2 scores in the final half of football. So it's just, this offense continues to just be on another level. And I believe in this game, Balone threw for another 5 touchdowns. So, he continues to just be outstanding. Still no interceptions.
You're talking the last 2 weeks, he's thrown, 9 and that's 14 touchdowns in 2 games. That's just crazy. That's a great pace. And I'm looking at their scores too. Only 2 games they didn't reach. First of all, they've been 40 or above in point wise every single game. And there's only 2 games they didn't reach 50 points. That puts it into perspective there for the way their offense has been playing.
Right. And at the moment, on pace, 58 touchdowns is what he's on pace for, which would finish him, I believe it's inside of the top 10 all time for a single season for passing touchdowns. 58 would give him the number 10 spot, right above Ryan Radcliffe from 2006 and Sherwood Fairview. But, it would put him past Big Ben, whose record's 54. 2 of the 3 seasons put up by Joe Burrow, in which he had 46, 47. Then his big one was 63 in his 2014 season before he went to Ohio State. But, he's putting himself in some elite categories. You look at the Mock Boys from Kenton and Grant Sherman. 4 of the top 10 spots are held by kids from Kenton High School. And then you look out, those guys all went Division I level. Colby Spice from Haviland Wayne Trace, 2013. Ryan Radcliffe. These are names that you have heard before. And Vinny Balone is going to be on this list, whether people like it or not. He has 35 touchdowns. With 4 games to go, he is 5 away from being top 30. So he's already in some elite categories. And I don't know exactly where this is going to finish him off for his career, but I can pretty much guarantee he is going to be inside of the top 50 when it comes to total passing touchdowns in a career, considering 45th is 66, and he's almost had that in a season. So, he is just on a record-setting pace. I know he keeps his Twitter updated. I think I'm going to go check on that real quick and see if he.
You just don't see passing.
He has right now. No, you don't.
You just don't see passing attacks like this at all in high school. You just can't see it often.
All right, so right now he has 104 career passing touchdowns. If you add on, 28 more, or he at 35, so 23 more to that total, you're going to have 127. 127 gives him 5th for most in a career, behind Ryan Radcliffe, Joe Burrow, and the Mock Boys. There's 2 of them, Benjamin and Maddie. So, he's on place top 5 all time for the state of Ohio in a career. It's legendary right now. And, people are going to come here and, hey, why you guys always talking about him? It's because you don't see historic performances like this every single year. You see really great talents like Bo Brungard, Dylan Dominguez last year, TC Caffey. You don't see records getting broken like this very often. There's a reason you look on this list and nobody has been added to the top 10 since 2014. Well, that's almost people don't want to hear this. That's almost a decade. That's 8 years, which seems like it's like, there's no way that's 8 years. 2014. That's almost a decade ago was the last time somebody was added to this list. And you can keep going back. Last time somebody was added to the top 20 was still 2015. And, right now, he's already inside of the top 100. If Vinny Balone never threw another pass again, he is inside of the top 12 for career passing touchdowns in the state of Ohio. That is how great Vinny Balone has been this season and his entire career here. Considering he had never thrown a football at the quarterback position coming into high school.
It's crazy. And playing that position in junior high, it's not easy to do that. It's not easy to play the position, but like you said, come into high school, not throw a pass and do what he's doing. And like I even said, you just don't see this type of opportunity. You have to be putting opportunities even to make plays like this and make records like this. For their offense, you don't even see this type of air it out type offense. You see teams try to do it in high school, but it's normally ground and pound in high school.
Yeah.
For him to even have the
can
opportunity.
throw.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why nobody gets put on this list, all that often, is because you don't see teams at this level be able to throw the football. To me, that's what makes them so dangerous
Teams
when you go to the playoffs.
They can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
This is what makes them, to me, so dangerous when they go to the playoff, because when you have a team that can actually throw the football, and they don't just have one guy either. And, Vinny Ballone will be the first guy to tell you, it's my offensive line. It's my 5 wide receivers that are all top 15 in the state of Ohio right now for, passing touchdowns, receiving touchdowns, I should say, or top 15, I think, in Division 5. But, he's going to be the first guy to credit elsewhere. But, at some point, and it's going to come sooner rather than later, he's going to get all the credit for that when it comes down to state championship or immortality, high school Hall of Fames, that kind of stuff. It's going to be Vinny Ballone. And, I'm sure he'll continue to say, hey, Anthony Lucente, my wide receivers, Brady Bunofsky, he's got a lot of guys around him making him look that good because he's got some phenomenal route runners. And that's, one kind of thing we leave out is, Vinny Ballone is on pace for all this. I haven't even checked what his wide receivers are on for yet. And, going into the next, week or so, that's something I'm now going to plan on doing because I didn't even think about checking those records, because Lucente in that game where Ballone had 9, he was just outside of the top 15 for most receiving touchdowns in the game. The record was 6. He had 4.
Yeah.
But we
can
go on about Louisville for like an hour, I think, on this show. It's they're so talented, and I really do think that they have the best shot, not JFK. I think this team has the best shot in Division 7 to win a title this year. They are just too lethal.
Yeah.
Especially after JFK showed some chinks in the armor against Mogador. I know they've had a brutal schedule, and they're going to absolutely dominate when it destroy Division 7 teams when they go into the playoffs. It's not even going to be. It's not going to be fun to watch. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be beatdowns, and the same is going to happen with Lowellville. Their strength of schedule might not be there, but I definitely think when they get there, I hope we see somewhere down the line JFK versus Lowellville. I don't know where that can set up because they're both in the same region. So I guess it would probably be regional championship if they're the top 2 seeds. So regional championship, that's all I want. Lowellville, Warren, JFK. It should not be anybody else, because those are the 2 teams that have given us the best football this season in Division 7.
Yeah.
I'm ready for it. Mineral Ridge, though, team not to be forgotten here in conference play. They've also moved into second, 2-1 in conference play, 5-1 overall. They bounce back off the Springfield upset. They take down Western Reserve 40-13. They didn't allow a touchdown in the first half of the game. My one thought, I think, on the Ridge coming into it, 19 points in the first half, and I think it's some offensive deficiencies. That's what cost them against Springfield. They didn't get going quick enough. I think kind of moving forward for this team, I want to see Ridge kind of jump out early, take control, because we look across, especially this conference. Lowellville got up 22-6 in the first quarter. In the first half, they had 36 points. Jackson Milton, they got a lot of points going early. And, you see the best teams, no matter where you are, they're scoring early. And they have these games controlled and done. They have running clocks by halftime. That's not something we're seeing from the Ridge. They are really good, really talented. But I'm kind of waiting for this offense to dominate a first half and get this thing over early. Put the JV squad in. I don't think this is a Mineral Ridge team that needs to play 4 quarters. They can get this done in a half, but I haven't seen the aggressiveness from it. And I want to see, as conference play goes on and they move into some of these, easier-ish games to end out the season against Sebring and Waterloo, or really Sebring. I think Jackson Milton, Lowellville, and Waterloo all have their challenges that will test Ridge. But, being right now the number 8 seed for Region 21 and Division 6, what they're doing right now, I don't think is going to translate very well to the postseason. They're going to be in close matchups. Look at the teams ahead of them: Dalton, Canton Central Catholic, Rootstown, Valley Christian, Cuyahoga Heights, Mogador, and Kirtland. Those are all schools that get it done early and often, especially that top 4. That top 4 will give you 1,000 points and then run you over in that first half. If the Rams want to be taken seriously as a playoff contender, I think that's something they need to figure out how to do, is take care of business early.
I hear what you're saying. Do it from start to finish. Do it consistently. And even if you do jump out the huge lead and you get to that second half and it's a continuous clock because of the margin of deficit, if you're playing with some of your backup guys that are normally in there getting some reps, but if they're getting in their second half getting more intense reps and a higher amount of reps, keep scoring too. I mean, that shows your depth too, and it's going to make you an even better team when you get these guys in and you score. So I agree with you about getting out good starts, but I also want to see that from the whole game on, from when that clock is continuous. Although you get less possessions when it's moving that way, but still, you look even more dominant when you're doing that.
Yeah, fair enough. But that does it for the MVAC Scarlet. Moving forward, we'll take into Mike's conference here, the NE8, which has been loaded with some really good teams. But they might have a surprising team stepping out in first place at the moment. Poland beat Niles this past week, 31-7. They are the only 3-0 team in conference play. They didn't win a game out of conference. They came into conference, and they've been undefeated in the NE8, which, you look at that and you're like, that's a real head scratcher. Granted, you look at their out of conference play and say, all right, Cheney, Cheney, Canfield, and Hubbard, and South Range. So, you do kind of look at that and you go, yeah, I mean, makes a little sense, but South Range isn't out of conference. They did lose that game. Max Preps is wrong. My apologies. But Poland, still 3-1 in conference play. I'll give it that. But I think South Range should be the top spot, 3-0 right now in conference play. I don't know why. It's like they're in the conference, on the page, but then it doesn't translate onto the schedule. It's dumb. It's the only place that has like everything together, but it's just dumb. It never works properly. It's always wrong.
It's all there though for us.
Right.
We've got to be the ones to know.
Right. Yeah. We just have to actually put it together. But, it's still an impressive performance that this Poland team is coming in and they can take down Niles in the fashion that they did, getting out to a hot start, 17-0. And I think one thing we're really seeing this season, I think it's kind of more than last, is teams are dominating an entire half of football and they're putting the game away. They're not allowing – I mean, we're seeing a lot of first half shutouts and big first halves. And, I know we've seen those in the past, but, remembering back the last 2 seasons I've called here, I feel there was a lot of close games every week. We're not seeing that. We're seeing domination from one team and off years from another. And I'm really waiting to see one of these teams kind of take that next step and keep it close in some of these games because, you look at the teams that have kept it close, it's Cardinal Mooney, it's Struthers, and you look at their records and it hasn't translated to, wins in any of them. But, in this conference, Poland's getting a win here and there. They can continue to make some noise. And, if you see them continue to win out, I mean, might not win the conference unless, South Range takes a double L, which I don't think is going to happen because they're playing pretty good. But they host Girard this week. Then you got Lakeview, Jefferson, and Struthers. It's a hard finale to the season, sure. But from what we've seen from them, 2 of those are conference games, so they should finish 5-5 if things are pretty much holding the way they have been, considering they've only lost once in conference. But, I think you have to be impressed with this Poland squad so far, Mike.
You do. And I think you even talked about last week, we were talking about this game with Niles, is that you look at their schedule, it's been loss, win, loss, win, loss, and win. So they've been hit or miss every single week. But I think you even mentioned the blowouts too. I mean, and it pretty much was against Niles, 31-7. That chalked that up as a blowout. But they've been in some close games, and I think that obviously you want to go into a game, you want to destroy a team, you want to score every time you have the ball. I get that, but it's not going to happen. And I think when you have blowouts, like I'll even say, like a team like Girard, pretty much every game there when they had this year was a blowout, and they come into a game last week where they get blown out. So you need to be sometimes in to be able to play in all situations, to have close games, and to be able to play with a lead too. If you have a huge lead, to be able to keep it. So I like what Poland's doing right now. That was a big one for them over Niles. I think that was a game we were going into both teams that were trying to find themselves, that were a little bit underrated too. But, Poland just came out the best of it.
I just got to shout this out here. Region 13 right now in Division 4, absolutely being dominated by our YSN schools. 5 of the top 10 inside of that top 10. Girard, number 1, Jefferson 2, West Branch is 3. Beaver local is the number 5 team. You got Salem at 7. Edgewood at 8, in Poland at the 10 spot. I think I even forgot to count Edgewood my first time around, but I mean, talk about that side of it.
Yeah.
Dominance right there. I mean, a lot of teams going to make some noise, but we talked about Poland already in the conference. How about we talk about the big game everybody wants to hear about? South Range and your Girard, Mike. Yeah. Nobody saw this one coming the way it did. I think maybe a couple people were like, I don't know if Girard's going to hang with them. I don't think anybody saw 56-12, though, as the final score going to that game.
I kind of did see a South Range win, even though I did pick Girard, because South Range is that good. They're as advertised. I think we all know that. But going into that, I think, 56 points you allowed home too from a team head coached by Pat Pearson, who is more of a defensive-minded coach. They just weren't ready to play at all. They just weren't. This game was actually on TV. It was the game of the week. I actually watched most of it. They just weren't ready to go at all. And I think you even saw at the end of the game too. Actually, South Range set the tone early because Girard's first possession, it was a short possession. They punt the ball away. South Range runs the punt back. Their first time without even having an offensive possession. So they're just a dominant team. They go into the second half, continuous clock, playing. This is what I just talked about some other teams. Bring in some of their reserves, and they still kept it rolling. So they're as advertised. I think we all know that.
They really are. But I think this was the first time I was impressed all in all by South Range because, you kind of looked at what they did. Springfield University School, Central Catholic. It's kind of what I expected them to do, win some tough games in there, and they handled their business. But, after the struggles to Struthers, they bounced back with that shutout against Poland.
Yeah.
I don't know. For whatever reason, I didn't love those two games despite a 48-0 shutout of Poland and an absolute dominating performance. But I guess coming into this one, I thought Girard had finally kind of turned the corner. I know they hadn't had a hard schedule.
Not really at all.
Their defense had just been so good. And I know it wasn't against great teams, but after the shutdown of Jefferson, I thought that their defense was going to hold them in this game. Their offense is one thing. It's up and down. It's a question mark every season. Sure, we saw it in the postseason really not be able to go anywhere. But I still expected them to keep this close, especially with their defense. I know South Range can score the ball, right? And being at home, and I know South Range can score, but so could Jefferson. And seeing Girard's defense completely fold like they did, and like you said, not being ready, I think it caught a lot of people off guard that Girard wasn't as good as advertised, and South Range may be better than advertised at this point. And you look at South Range right now, and Girard's the top spot even after the loss in Region 13 for Division 4. And now you're looking up South Range. They have the top spot for Division 5, Region 17. So this was a battle of top teams, and South Range is one of the few undefeateds actually in this bracket. It's them, Sugar Creek, Garway, and Edison, who is another YSN team that is just playing amazing football right now.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that we know South Range is good. We know Girard's good, but I think just South Range is we're not taking anything away from Girard. It's just 5-0 coming into this game. The competition they played wasn't the greatest. We're all pretty comfortable in saying that, but I think just the explosive play battle, South Range clearly won that. Special teams, they clearly owned that. They owned every facet of this game, 56-12. They were just ready to play it better, and I'm not calling out Girard at all. I'm just saying I think South Range is a better overall team and they're more talented.
That's what they've shown yet again here. Girard they just can't seem to win that matchup. It doesn't matter how they're doing season to season. They just can't beat South Range.
Yeah, and then to close out too, like you said, this weekend against Poland, Hubbard, Struthers, and Niles. That's a little bit of a challenge there to close out. So we'll see how to kind of rebound from this embarrassment at home. It was their homecoming night too.
Ooh, that's a tough way to go out.
Yeah.
But let's look back here. It's series history, right? They don't have anything on Max Preps. Last time Girard won, it's been 4 straight wins for the Raiders in this battle. But Jefferson kind of shocked some people because their defense showed up and they didn't have a great offensive night, but they take down 4-1 Hubbard and hand them their second loss of the season, 25-13. And I have to say, I was a little surprised that Jefferson, had this low scoring of a game that they came out with, because we saw last time they were in a low scoring battle, they didn't win.
Yeah.
And, twice on the season, they haven't gotten the offense going. Once against Harvey and Painesville week 2, they came out with a win. Week 3, they lost. Now here in week 6, they get it done. So, it's very questionable. My biggest problem, when you see a team like that with such a good offense, but they lack consistency, one thing you have to worry about is that's a first or second round exit, because they're just going to have a bad night on the offense and they're not going to be able to make the playoff run that they really should, because they are a good football team with a lot of talent on it. And you really do want to see them go somewhere, They're the number 2 team in the region for Region 13, Division 4, just right behind Jefferson and actually ahead of West Branch, which, is a little surprising to me because I think West Branch would win if they went head to head. But obviously, computer points don't take that into effect. But I'm very concerned about how this team is playing. Defense is getting better, which is something you like to see. You want to see that defense continue to play. But when you're having offensive struggles, offensive inconsistencies, I think is the best word there. I think it opens some holes, and you're like, I don't know what to really think about this team.
I think that's the thing. I keep talking about how, finding ways to win in all types of games, close, blowouts, somewhat close, whatever you want to call it. You still want consistency, though. And I think that separates you from some other teams. And although they have pulled out wins this year, blowouts in close games, they've been in both, but it just doesn't. I think when it depends on who they play to come down the stretch, especially in the playoffs too. And we know they're a good team. It's just like you said, a matter of putting it together and just being consistent. It's the hardest thing to do in sports, but that's what separates teams is when they can do that. Yeah,
and something that team on your chest right there, Mike, has some troubles with.
Every team I support has trouble with that. So
yeah, but Jefferson, I'm putting them on upset watch this week. They're going up against Struthers, who pulled off, I'll say a semi-upset. It wasn't a huge upset, but they beat Lakeview handedly, 41-3. They put up 28 points in the second quarter alone. And Struthers came into the week at 1-4. They hadn't won a game in conference play. Lakeview was 1-1 in the conference, 3-2 overall. It definitely was coming in maybe as a little bit of a favorite, not a heavy one. But if there was a spread going into it, I think Lakeview would have been favored probably by a touchdown or so going into it, especially with Struthers keeping it close so often. Probably 6.5 point spread, I think would have been fair for that game. And Struthers completely comes out and turns it around and wins it 41-3. And now you're seeing this Struthers team. I think you're hard pressed to find a better 2-4 squad around with, the close games they've had against Streetsboro, South Range, and Hubbard. I mean, you're looking at a team that could be one loss. Flip this around. They could be a 5-1 team right now if they had just pulled out the game in overtime or gotten, another point against Streetsboro. South Range lost by 10, but still, that's one of the closest anyone's been able to hold at the South Range all season. So this is Struthers' team. I really think this final 4 games, Jefferson, Niles, Girard, and Poland, I think Struthers has a very real possibility to win it out and go 6-4.
You just talked about the Streetsboro, South Range, and Hubbard games. Total of what? 18 points, if my math's right. They lost combined out of those 3. So they're right there. And I think you just talked about with them playing Jefferson and Niles and Jordan Poland to come down the stretch. All this team's got to watch out for Struthers too. Because like you said, probably the best 2-4 team around here that, on paper, the record-wise, you think, oh, just 2-4. But still, like I just said, those games they hung in. So I think Jefferson, Niles, Jordan Poland, some teams got to watch out for them too.
And keep this in mind, if Struthers does this and they can win out with the wins over both Jefferson and Girard and Poland, all 3 of those teams are ahead of them right now in Division 4, Region 13.
Yeah.
And Struthers is a 19 seed at the moment. They're only behind Lake Catholic, who has the same record as them. Struthers doesn't need to do a lot to get a playoff spot here, to make that top 16. They're right there. And if they can pull one of these, and give them, take the Poland game, take the Niles game, and take one of Jefferson or Girard, they put themselves in a really good spot to potentially take that 16 spot.
And we just talked about a few minutes ago teams that had, not so ideal starts that are kind of finding themselves back into the race to get in. Struthers is one of them.
It's a very intriguing finish to this season. I think that there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be an easy one to talk about. I think it's going to be all over the place. But that ends our coverage here of the NE8 for the start of the week. We'll obviously get back into it on Thursday and Friday as we go for week 3 of our high school football extravaganza here on the Casual Sports Podcast, our 2-day event. Yeah, we're going back to it. It's fun.
Yeah.
I like it. Gives us more time to get into all these teams. Obviously, we need 2 days just to recap the whole weekend. It was so intriguing. This was probably one of the best weekends we've had so far in terms of action and big games and, kind of unexpected events.
You're going to get a lot more of it too. Like we just said, teams that are fighting their way back into contention here.
So moving on into the Northeastern Conference, we don't have all the teams obviously in here, but we got a couple. Wyndham, I believe, is the big one we got. They take a loss here, 42-20 to Southeast, and Wyndham, they're 2-3. They've been kind of all over the place this season. I mean, 156 points for, 156 points against, but it almost feels like they're on a seesaw. It's just constant back and forth. You don't know which version of the Bombers you're going to get week to week.
I think that's what we just talked about with some other teams. You just don't know what you're going to get, and I think that's not the way some teams want to play. But matchups have to do with that. Play calling, whatever you want, everything goes into that too. But it's just it's just a matter of finding that consistency. Some teams can, some teams can't.
Yeah, and I believe we're having problems with the website at the moment, so I can't see who is the all the official teams we have in this bracket. So I guess we'll just run down the rest of the conference real quick. As PV beat Harding 38-12. Matthews beat St. John 48-6. How about that Matthews team, man? They are continuing to just play really, really good football. And I mean, they still have just one loss on the year. They're 4-1 now. And, that one loss went to Edison 48-10. But, outside of that, they've looked really, really good. And they sit seventh for Division 7, Region 25, which is the same division, obviously, we talked about with Southern Local, Lowellville, JFK, Springfield is there. So the competitive spot to be in if you're, this Matthews squad. And on the other side, I'm going to look up where Wyndham is on this list. I think they're probably a little back. Yeah, they're the 18th spot or 17th spot, just behind Wellsville. So a couple more wins here. The bottom half of this region, not looking great. There's only a handful of winning teams. There's 7 winning teams in this division right now, or in this region. It's a spot. It's still wide open with 3 weeks to go. So very, very possible that you can see Wyndham still make that run, turn it around, and finish themselves off in the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving in quickly here, we talked a lot about it, but the Portage Trail Conference, JFK are one team in it. They do go down, unfortunately, to Mogador, 28-14. The schedule finally came back to bite this squad, but you still have to give them a ton of credit for going up in these conference games and really pushing out there to try and go up against the biggest of the bigs, and obviously playing in a hard conference in which Mogador is a team that is Division 6 school. They're ranked second in Region 21 behind Kirtland, obviously a perennial powerhouse in Kirtland. So JFK, we thought they could do it because they've done it all season long, and they've had some really big wins throughout the year over Champion, Delta, Garfield, Perkins, but finally it catches up to them. And it's unfortunate because I think they had a good shot for an undefeated season, but sooner or later, tough game after tough game, it was eating on them. They needed a rest and recovery week, and you're not afforded that here in high school football. If there was a bye week and they could have used it before this Mogador game, I think it was a whole different story for them. I just think finally, for the first time, they were out of gas.
I mean, yeah, when you're playing a schedule that tough too, and any level of football, when you're playing, that's tough when every week to week to week, you're playing a strong team and you're on the verge of losing, and they found a way to get through some of it, but it's going to catch up to you at some point when you're just playing great competition.
In high school is the only level of football too that we don't have these bye weeks. No other team is going 10 straight weeks of football. You just don't see it. So
this is it. You got to get through it.
Right, and they unfortunately aren't able to, and the road's not getting any easier. They went hardcore with this schedule, and Portage Trail Conference is looking really, really good. I mean, outside of Aquinas, Southeast Ravenna 4-2, JFK 5-1, Mogador 6-0, Rootstown 5-1, and they have Rootstown this week. Luckily, JFK gets to come back home, defend that field up there in Warren. So I'd probably go ahead and give them back the edge this week just because they have been that good. But you look at Rootstown. They're only 3 spots behind Mogador inside of Division 6 football in Region 21. Rootstown's the 5 seed. JFK just lost to the 2 seed. So, I think Rootstown has to look at this and go, all right, that's what the number 1 team looks like. How do we stand up against them? Because they're going to have Mogador week 10 of the season. This is now a bar-setting game for Rootstown on the other side. So even though they're going on the road, they have to go on the road against Mogadore. They're going to be coming in with a fierce mentality, especially after coming off of a big win against Aquinas, 56-8. They're getting everything going their way, and to start conference play, this isn't a spot JFK wanted to go where they lost that first game in the conference to Mogadore. Then you had Rootstown coming in right after it, trying to kind of keep up with Mogadore at the moment.
Yeah, when you're trying to keep up with them, though, you got to beat them.
Right.
Yeah,
we'll see how that plays out. I still like JFK until they really give us a reason not to, pick them. I think a 14-point loss to a team, an entire division above you, that's also that's a 2 seed in their respective region. That's a fair loss for JFK.
You don't get too depressed over that, yeah.
You're right. You're not getting depressed because they come into it wanting to win. We expect them to win a little bit, but at the same time, that's not a matchup that you are ever going to be favored in. Going up a division. It's like, it wouldn't matter if North Dakota State from the FCS jumped up to take on, we'll say Penn State. How about that? Penn State, I think comparable in that.
That'd be a tough matchup.
Right. But, North Dakota State, no matter what, they're never going to be favored against Penn State.
No.
They might have a shot depending on Penn State's season, but you're never going to be favored going into that matchup unless, Penn State was having a really bad year. And that's kind of how I feel about this. Right. You always got that shot. But you're never coming in favored.
No.
That's how I felt about JFK in that game last week. They weren't favored, but they had their shot. And they unfortunately came up just short.
It's nothing to be just upset about. You got another one. You got to get ready this weekend, too. You got to get over it.
Right. Yeah. There's no time to rest on your laurels and, look back and get down on a loss like that because the shots keep coming.
Another tough one.
Yeah. And speaking of tough ones, man, this Louisville Leopard squad, they do drop the 1-5. They lost the last 3. But you look at who they lost to. Massillon Perry, they're top 5. Uniontown Lake, they're top 5 in their region. And North Canton Hoover, let me just double check on this one. Pardon me. They're only top 10 in their region in Division 2. Lake is the number 1 seed in that same region in 7. So Uniontown Lake actually is the number 1 seed over Massillon Washington. So if that just shows you the schedule that Louisville has had to run through, not to mention a Steubenville at the beginning of the season. Let me just check on this one as well. Oh, by the way, number 1 seed for Region 15. You talk about maybe the worst schedule to have ever sat in front of a team to go into a season. This Leopards have JFK beat because you look at this. I mean, 2 number 1 seeds. You got North Canton Hoover, who's top 10. Massillon Perry is let's see where Massillon Perry is. Massillon Perry's a 13. The worst team that you go up against is a 13 seed on your schedule. Yeah, I mean, you ain't gonna win that. I'm sorry, but that ain't happening. That is. Oh, and by the way, Canal Fulton Northwest they went up against 6 seed at the moment.
Brutal.
Right. I mean, talk about they set their team up for failure hard, dude. They had no shot at this season with. If there was a fortune teller who'd come in and looked at that schedule to know what they would have been, Louisville, I think, would have tried to make a couple of change-ups in there because it just ain't fair, dog. That ain't fair. That is too good of a matchup to go into. And this week, they're taking on Green, who let me just check on this one. I don't know. Hold on, let me double check which Green that they're going up against. Uniontown Green, who is an 8 seed. There you go. So the road
I know you want a
continues
tough
to stay
schedule,
hard.
but that's just hard.
Right, you want a tough schedule. I don't think a team wants to go up against the top 10 school in the region every single week.
Every week,
that's just right. You don't have any opportunity at any point in the season to really get things going. It's just like every time we're like, all right, now can we try out something new? It's like, no, you don't have any time. You don't have any time to try anything new or get guys into a rhythm. It's
just like we talked about with JFK. I mean, some teams you can find ways to get through, but the majority of the time, like you said, if you're looking at the schedule before the year, odds are you're not going to have ideal or great time, whatever you want to say. You're gonna have more rough times than you do when you're playing the schedule like that.
Talk about brutal though. That's a rough one.
That's
Mohawk though. We'll move over into PA, our final team here on the network for high school football. Wrap it up. Mohawk finally picks up a win, 31-6 over New Brighton. I think everybody kind of knew that was going to happen. Brighton was 0-4. They had terrible defense and terrible offense. They do manage 6 points against Mohawk, which might be the only negative in that game for this Mohawk team, is that they do allow a couple points to come in a game. I think they really needed to get that shutout and turn things around for the last half of the season. But, they have Lincoln this week. It's a home game for them. I think you have to look at them, and they're going to be favored despite being a 1-2 team. They're going up against a 1-4 squad on the other side. So I like where Mohawk's sitting at the moment. They definitely need to turn things around and get some wins back, but getting that win, their first of the season this late, I think it's an important way to turn things around. Remember, they're a week shorter. They're a week behind us in the state of Ohio. So as we're going into week 6, they're going into week 5.
Yeah, and sometimes all you need is one. We'll see what happens with the way they finish out.
That's what happened with Springfield. They just needed one game to give them that confidence and turn them in the right direction.
Yeah, and some of these teams,
and their one game came at a loss to Louisville. I think that was really the turning point for that Tigers team.
Yeah, some of these teams they play are tough too. They play some tough teams. Beaver Falls is normally pretty tough too, but like I said, sometimes you just need one. So we'll see what happens to them. I was looking at the schedule. I was like, wait, is that right? And then I remembered they start later. So I mean, they're still pretty early. They can kind of get things going if they
and they missed 1 week.
Get it that direction. Yeah.
But let's go ahead and move it over into some volleyball for the last 13 minutes of the show here on your sports network, Casual Sports Podcast. That's Mike Wolfgang. Let's flip it up. Going into tonight, really the big volleyball game. I'm actually going to be on the call. A little honor to be put on such a high-profile game. I believe it's going to be the biggest volleyball game of the night. But Austintown Fitch take on Ursuline in Ursuline tonight. So this is going to be a big one. 6:30 start. They're going a little bit earlier. So, going to be the first one on the network tonight. It's going to be fun. I'm expecting probably 5 sets out of this battle. I mean, these are two of the biggest schools we got going on here on the network. And, if volleyball had a few more fans going to it, this might eclipse some of the football totals you see during the season, because this is a must-see game. Both teams are coming off losses in their last 2. Ursuline lost to Canfield, then beat JFK. Fitch beat Moody, then lost to Girard. So they both have a recent loss on the schedule, but Fitch is 12-2. Ursuline is 9-4. I'm going to make a pick here. I'm taking Fitch because obviously 2 losses. They've been really good. And can you ever really doubt this team when it comes to sports? My thought is no. I mean, they haven't been taken past 3 sets more than a handful of times, and they've obviously won the majority. So they've only allowed 11 sets against them. 6 of those obviously came in their 2 losses. So outside of the 2 losses, their 12 wins, they've allowed just 5 set wins against them. To me, that's really outstanding. And Ursuline, obviously, a handful of losses for them as well. In their 9 wins, they've only allowed 7 set losses. So, equally good. I think this is probably one of the deepest games they both go this season. But I'm taking Fitch.
Equally good, and I think, like you said, Fitch normally pretty good in every sport they have in their program or in their school system. But maybe the last couple years in some sports it's kind of lacked with Ursuline, but Ursuline was like that, before that. So I'm actually going to go Ursuline.
I like to see it. I mean, I really do think that goes either way.
It's a really good matchup.
A really, really good matchup. We got a couple other ones, but none that meet that high-profile standard of 2 really great teams looking to hit their stride for the last quarter of the season, because we're coming down final 2 weeks, really a little over. October 15th is kind of our unofficial end of the season. I don't remember when the official end is, but pretty much every team's wrapping up in that week. So, I mean, you're coming down to it. You got to win everything from here on out. Get as high of a playoff seed as you can. And that goes here for our next 2 teams. Boardman going on the road, taking on Cardinal Mooney in Mooneytown, man. And inside that gym, it's a small gym. There's really ain't a lot of room to pack it, but it gets loud quickly. I called basketball there all season. Yeah, no, it's not like Boardman's gym, which I've also called that entire season of basketball. And granted, it was during the COVID year, so I never got to hear that place get rowdy, which is really unfortunate. I'd love to get a chance to go back there when they have a big game this upcoming season, because I never got the chance to hear that place loud and proud. And they had a really great team that year. Trey Petro and Ethan Anderson. Oh, my gosh. What a year they had. But, regardless of that, Boardman going to that, mini Mooney Stadium, but that arena, it gets loud. And all it takes is 1 or 2 big sets for Cardinal Mooney, and they're going to have all the momentum, all the noise inside of that gym. And to me, going into Mooney might be one of the hardest things to do that I've seen. I mean, I know they're only 2-2 this season at home with with losses against Lakeview. And my entire page glitches out. Sorry about that.
I'm having some troubles too.
In Howland. And then their wins at home came against Liberty and Harding. So I still think going into Mooney is one of the hardest things. And it doesn't matter what sport they're in. They kind of teeter on the edge of this 500 record, but then postseason comes and they explode. And, in a good way, too. So you got to watch out for this team because they're ready to shock you every single week. And I'm always impressed when it comes to this Mooney team. They always seem to surprise me.
Yeah, flipping the switch, normally strong program. I think this is kind of a little bit of an under the radar type of game going on tonight. But I actually got to go with Mooney too. I think it's not as big as when Boardman's at a gym and it's packed, but like you said, it does get loud there. And I think they have a good fan base in Mooney and normally strong program. So I got to go Mooney at home.
Hoping they pack that gym tonight because if they can get it going. My printer is going as loud as possible, so I'm trying to be quiet in the background. I need to print out my rosters for the game tonight, as that just has to be the loudest thing going on. Thought it would be a little quieter. Guess not. Got to print page 2 here.
Sorry, I got two dogs in the background here. So
okay. But our next game should be an easy one to talk about. Jefferson 13-4 taking on Niles at 2-12. Niles has lost 9 in a row. Meanwhile, Jefferson has won their last 7. This is pretty easy. This is going 3 sets tonight. Jefferson's taking it. Going to be an early bus ride home.
Yep.
Lakeview at 14-2. They did drop back-to-back games. This was the top-rated team in the Youngstown region. But, after those 2 losses, they've rebounded with 2 wins. Now they have a Struthers squad tonight. I think they're going to win this in 3 sets. I don't really have any quarrels against that. That's just they're still really good. They took 2 hard losses, and while Struthers has won their last 2, they beat East and they beat Niles. And the Niles win probably a little better, but
not great.
One thing I can say, Struthers, they might force this 4 sets, but I'm still going to have Lakeview win this. And there's been a lot of discussion who's the best team in this region when it comes to volleyball. From what I saw, it's Crestview. Those ladies are unstoppable. They look so freaking amazing. And they went on the road into Brookfield, which is another one of those arenas that gets loud. They show up to sporting events. I was surprised. It was a pretty packed gym on the one side that they had opened. And it just didn't matter. Crestview took the crowd out immediately. But that's a really impressive squad. So if there's any conversation on, best team in the region when it comes to volleyball, I got Crestview as the top spot. And from what I'm looking at in some of the volleyball votes, Crestview is up there, and so is Fitch. So I'm gonna looks like I'm getting a pretty good matchup tonight with that Fitch squad. I'm excited to see what they can do. But until proven wrong, Crestview is just amazing. They haven't lost a single set this year. But this Lakeview, they've only lost 7. They're still really good. I got them taken tonight, maybe 4, but likelihood is they go 3.
Yeah, I think it's possible it goes somewhat long, but I got to stay with you on that.
All right, now we're going to probably rapid fire a few more. We're down to our final 5 minutes. Liberty and Garfield. Liberty going on the road. I'll see Liberty this coming Thursday, but Garfield is another team playing really good. In a good spot to potentially take the conference here. They do have a couple losses, 1 in conference, 2 Crestview, who's most likely now going to come out with the conference victory because, as I just mentioned, they're unstoppable. They're playing really, really good. But I'm going to take Garfield at home tonight. I really do like Liberty, and I think that they're a really talented team, but their home and away splits really tell a story. 5-2 at home, 3-4 on the road.
Give me Liberty. I'll stay in my backyard here. I'll go with Liberty.
Your backyard, man. I'm even closer, and I picked against them. I've been covering that school for
actually, no, if you want to go that way, I should be picking them because they're right up the street. They're Gerard's old rival.
Right, I was going to say, but Battle of Belmont, and you're picking your rival.
I'll stay.
Better than picking your nose. Southern taking on Columbiana on the road tonight. This is a really good matchup, too. Southern coming in 11-3. They've won 6 in a row. Columbiana, they've won 3 of their last games, and they are 10-5 on the season. They're both playing really good. Unfortunately, I just think the strength of schedules is what's kind of helped Columbiana look the way they do. I think Southern, they've had a couple more games in there that I kind of look at and go, I like those a little better. I know it's pretty comparable, a lot of conference games, and this EOAC conference definitely not as strong as it is in other, sports. But I'm going Southern.
I guess I'll just pick against you, so I'll go Southern too.
Love how you're making your picks here. I went against you last time, so I'll go with you this time.
Well, I'm, keeping it, in the middle. I'm not a huge volleyball guy, so.
Hubbard coming in at 3-10. They did win their last game out against a strong Poland squad, but now they go on the road tonight and they take on the 7-8 South Range, who has had their struggles at home, just 4-6 when they've defended their home arena. However, Hubbard 1-4 on the road. So with that being said, I'm taking South Range. I think there's a good chance, though, this goes 4 sets. I think Hubbard can force it.
Yeah, I'm going to go South Range too, just because, it's the road record's hard to have a good one, and I think they really don't have a great one. So I gotta go with the home team here.
Now, there's a bunch of other games going on the networks tonight, but those are just the games we have broadcasters for. I'm going to be on Fitch, Ursuline, Hartwig going to Mooney for that game, Brian Oatridge and Niles, Bob Zanny and Struthers. Ty Bartell's got the Liberty Garfield game. Chris Sigler's got Southern and Columbiana. Hubbard South Range is a video-only broadcast tonight on your sports network. We got a soccer game as well that will wrap out our show as Howland comes in at 9-1-1. They will go into Boardman, who was 7-2-3, for what should be a really fun matchup. I just called actually the girls soccer last night. Howland beat Boardman. That was interesting to say the least, calling a soccer game. Very different from every other sport we do here on the network. Very different flow, completely different pace. It was a little odd, but coming to this, Howland's playing really good, 9-1-1, and their one loss, they lost by a single point. It was 1-0. In the tie, 0-0 against Canfield. So I'm taking Howland. They're really good. And, Boardman's good too, but I think that Tigers program is on a different level at the moment.
I'm going to go Howland too. I think it's a sport where most of the time the best team wins, and sometimes they make it pretty quick match. So I'm going to roll with you on that. One
thing about soccer, Mike, not quick. I learned that one the hard way last night. It was cold. I had a breeze coming right in the window at Howland Lombardo Field, and after a while, I was like, all right, yeah. I mean, my score was 4-1, but that was slow. That was a slow 4-1. It's not like, it's one of the. I was having a conversation with my dad last night after this game coming back. I'm like, everyone's like, this tells me baseball is slow. I'm like, at least every 10 seconds you got something happening. The soccer is just it's back and forth, but you're only having an exciting moment really once every 10, 15 minutes.
Baseball's only slow if you don't know the sport. That's all I'm saying.
Maybe that's the same case with soccer. I felt I knew soccer pretty well, but maybe I still got a bunch to learn, which I know I do. But I felt I knew it well enough to be able to go in there and broadcast it. It was not my best performance to start it off.
We talk hockey. It's similar. I know some soccer stuff. My sister used to play it.
It's similar. So. Hey, man, if they put those girls out there in full pads and let them run into each other, I think that would make it a lot more interesting.
Sign us up.
But that is going to do it here for the Casual Sports Podcast. Power Hour coming up next on your sports network. I'm Alec Brennan, Mike Wolfgang. Matt Morrison rejoins the show hopefully tomorrow for the Wednesday edition, and we'll get down into some college football near the end of it. But obviously, soccer and volleyball will control as much of it as we have going on in the network. That does it for us tonight. As mentioned, Power Hour up next.